Have you ever gotten a compliment and just instantly wanted to crawl under a rock? Yeah, it happens to the absolute best of us. So, welcome to this explainer on why we so often sabotage genuine compliments and turn them into secret insults. It's a fascinating and honestly kind of frustrating quirk of human psychology. But don't worry, by the end of our time together, you're going to understand exactly why your brain pulls this little trick and, more importantly, how to finally stop it. I mean, we've all heard those little internal whispers, right? Someone looks you right in the eye, tells you that you did an amazing job, and your brain immediately goes, oh, they're just being nice. Or if they knew the real me, there's no way they'd say that. Instead of just feeling a nice, warm sense of pride, your mind totally springs a trap. Within seconds, it takes this genuine gift and twists it into a hidden threat. Praise suddenly feels like pressure, and kindness turns into this intense, squirm-inducing discomfort. So why exactly does the human brain turn positive words into hidden criticism? It really makes you wonder why a simple gift of kindness or just getting recognized for hard work suddenly triggers this deep sense of unease. Why is it that some people can just effortlessly smile and light up when they get a compliment, while the rest of us feel incredibly awkward, embarrassed, or even deeply anxious? Well, the truth is, the biggest critic in your life isn't your boss, your family, or even society. It's actually that little voice inside your own head. Let's look at the compliment, contradiction, and how our identity shapes our perception. To really get this, let's look at how two completely different people react to the exact same compliment. Imagine someone walks up and says, wow, you're incredibly talented. Now, person A just smiles, accepts it warmly, and says, thank you. Super simple, right? But person B, they immediately deflect. They physically shrink back and start making excuses, saying things like, oh no, I'm really not, I just got super lucky. It's the exact same compliment, but we're seeing two completely different reactions. And this brilliantly illustrates that we don't process information based on objective reality alone. We process it through the highly subjective lens of our existing identity. And that happens because in a split second, your brain asks a critical question. Does this information match what I already believe about myself? If the answer is no, your brain gets hit with a heavy dose of cognitive dissonance. It feels that tension, and its immediate reaction is to just reject the positive feedback. It swats it away. Why? Because to our brains, familiarity feels a whole lot safer than change. Even if that familiar feeling is a super negative self-image, your brain overwhelmingly prefers the comfort of what it already knows. Which brings us to the idea of consistency over happiness, which is really the brain's ultimate goal. There is this profound psychological truth about the hidden priorities of our minds, and it's this: the brain values consistency way more than happiness. Let that sink in for a second. Consistency, not happiness. Your mind is basically a stubborn architect that refuses to change its blueprint. It's constantly trying to maintain a stable, predictable picture of who you are. So, if you've spent years believing you aren't smart enough or maybe not successful enough, compliments actually create a huge structural problem for your brain. It is literally so much easier for our minds to just dismiss praise entirely than to do the massive, exhausting work of rebuilding a self-concept we've held on to for years. So, where does this all start? Let's talk about where the resistance begins and trace these origins. A lot of this actually starts way before adulthood, long before careers or complicated relationships. Think about the messaging so many of us absorb when we're growing up. You hear things like, don't get too proud of yourself, or you're not that special, or hey, stop showing off. Now, even if parents or teachers said these things just trying to encourage a little humility without any intention to cause harm, these comments quietly wire a child's nervous system. They teach us a very specific lesson. Being noticed is risky, and praise comes heavily loaded with expectations. Standing out suddenly feels unsafe. And then years later, you become this adult who reflexively shrugs off positive feedback, all because your nervous system learned a long time ago that praise is almost always followed by pressure and disappointment. Now compound that childhood conditioning with what psychologists call the negativity bias. Evolutionarily speaking, this makes total sense. Back in the day, ignoring a danger, like a predator hiding in the bushes, could literally get you killed. But ignoring a compliment about how nice your cave looked, zero survival consequences. Nothing happens. And that is exactly why your brain stores emotional pain, criticism, and embarrassment with just extraordinary efficiency. Honestly, one single harsh comment can easily outweigh 10 genuine compliments in your memory bank. Our brains are quite literally hardwired to notice threats, not praise. This builds into a much more complex issue: the hidden fear of success, and what happens when praise feels like a test. See, sometimes the root problem isn't actually low self-esteem at all. It's the terrifying expectations that compliments seem to create. If someone calls you the smartest person on the team, your brain might immediately panic and think, great, now I have to prove it. What if I fail next time? This right here is the absolute core of imposter syndrome. Highly successful people, we're talking doctors, lawyers, top entrepreneurs, they feel this inwardly all the time. They perceive every single compliment as a pop quiz that they might completely bomb the next time around. Outwardly, they look incredibly successful, but internally, they're terrified that they've somehow fooled everyone. And things get even more complicated for a very specific type of person. Let's look at the overthinker's dilemma and how we end up interrogating kindness. If you are an overthinker, and hey, no judgment here, you don't just hear the words, you interrogate them. Someone casually says, hey, you look great today. Instantly, your brain spins into overdrive. Wait, why did they say today? Do I normally look bad? Were they being sarcastic? What exactly did they mean by that? Within seconds, a mind that's busy searching for hidden meanings, ulterior motives, and potential flaws completely misses the genuine kindness that was just handed to them. A simple, nice compliment turns into an exhausting psychological puzzle. But over time, rejecting all this positive feedback really takes a toll. This is the cost of rejecting praise, when criticism basically becomes your identity. When self-judgment becomes your constant, everyday companion, you end up with this stark, jarring contrast between your external and internal worlds. The contradiction gets overwhelmingly loud. The external world looks at you and says, you're doing great, but your internal world insists, nope, you're failing. The outside world sees undeniable talent. Your inside world just chalks it up to dumb luck. People tell you you're deeply resilient, but internally, you feel like you are barely holding on by a thread. And to resolve the immense discomfort of that contradiction, a lot of people just choose to trust their inner critic. Why? Because they've been listening to that voice for years. It's familiar, even if it's deeply painful. But here is what happens when you do that. Rejecting thousands of positive observations over a lifetime reinforces the idea that your good qualities just aren't real. It leaves you with a totally distorted perception of your own self-worth. It's exactly like looking into a mirror covered in a thick layer of dust. The reflection itself isn't wrong. The mirror just needs a really good cleaning. The reality of who you are isn't distorted. It's just your perception of it that's a bit cloudy. So how do we actually clean that mirror? Well, it takes an empowering mindset shift. Just say, thank you. Let's look at how treating compliments as scientific data can completely shift your mindset. Here is a truly liberating realization for you. Confidence doesn't come from convincing yourself you're perfect, not at all. It comes from accepting positive evidence. Think about it. A scientist wouldn't just ignore hundreds of observations that support a conclusion, right? So you shouldn't ignore the consistent positive data provided by your friends, your family, and your coworkers. If 10 different people tell you you're a great listener, okay, that's not a coincidence. That is data. If the data keeps pointing to the fact that you are capable, resilient, and kind, at some point, you just have to look at the evidence. So I want you to ask yourself this question. What if the qualities you struggle to recognize in yourself are actually super obvious to everyone else? Just allowing for that possibility changes absolutely everything. It suggests that your own internal self-perception might not actually be the most accurate perception in the room. What if the people around you are seeing something real and you're the one who's mistaken? Honestly, admitting that requires a little bit of humility, but I promise you it is incredibly freeing. The solution to all of this is beautifully simple, though, yes, it absolutely takes practice. Stop arguing with compliments. Just say thank you. Seriously, that's it. You don't need to explain them away, you don't need to deflect, and you definitely don't need to minimize your achievements. Simply saying thank you opens up the possibility that people might actually be telling the truth about you. You don't need to earn the compliment twice, just let the words land. Try to remember this really beautiful thought. A compliment is often a glimpse of yourself through someone else's eyes. Other people can so often see the kindness, the courage, and the growth that have become completely invisible to you simply because you've been staring at your own flaws for entirely too long. They get to see the whole magnificent picture, not just the tiny little parts you're self-conscious about. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, kind of provocative question. The voice in your head is incredibly powerful, for sure, but does it always tell the truth? The next time someone offers you a genuine gift of praise, I want you to just pause and really listen, because the negative story you've been telling yourself all these years, it might not be the whole story after all. Allow yourself to accept the good evidence. Thank you so much for joining me today, and hey, remember to clean that dusty mirror every once in a while.